a little uncomfortable. I sat in the passenger seat of Sarah's car. She'd allowed Alexander 5 minutes in private to say goodbye to me. The whole argument would have been funny if not for the fact that I was on the losing side. After all, Sarah was 7 years Alexander's junior, and she totally strong-armed him to do as she said. Of course it didn't help that Alexander knew she was right and wasn't really putting up that much of a fight. He'd taken me aside, straight into his office, and attacked my lips as soon as the door closed. That was the reason I was uncomfortable now. Sarah was wearing that knowing smile on her face, and it was very unsettling. We were nearly there when she said suddenly, "I know this is private for a lot of people, but we're friends, right?" Confused, I nodded. "Of course we are. How does your mark look?" I stared at her. "Mark? Did she mean the hickey?" "Yeah, your soulmate mark," Sarah clarified. I was still staring, but I really didn't know what she was talking about. I knew Alexander had said something once about how the hickey wasn't a real mark, because that should be permanent. But I was pretty sure I didn't have anything like that. "He hasn't marked you yet?" Sarah's eyebrows climbed up in surprise, and then she was suddenly pulling her shirt up to show her left hip. Just above the line of her pants there was a marking. It looked silvery lined with black. With elegant lines and dots, they shaped a heart encircled with pretty swirls and music notes entwined. It seemed almost alive and flowed with her skin. The colors like nothing ink could do. "This is mine." Not all marks actually have a heart. They are unique for each couple and reflect a little of their personalities. That's why a lot of couples hide them. They are afraid to reveal things about themselves to others. Alexander was going to give me a mark like that? How would he do it? I scrunched up my face as I tried to imagine it. Would it involve him biting me? No. Dennis didn't have fangs, and he'd marked Sarah, so that couldn't be it. Sarah smiled. "The heart reflects how passio Alex we both are. The swirls indicate scents and steam. They're for Dennis's talents as a cook, amongst other things, while the music notes are for me." "It's very beautiful, miss. It seems a little weird that just the females get the mark. It's like marking territory or something." That seemed a little off to me. I didn't want to go around with this big sign saying I was Alexander's, while nobody could tell he was mine. Sarah laughed. "You get to mark him too, Brittany. Dennis has the same mark as I do, but his is right over his heart. You should start thinking about where you want yours and where you'd want to mark Alexander. It's important you get that mark soon. Werewolves can smell you're marked. They'll leave you alone after that. It's very sacred in their culture. In every culture, really. Least in the vampire culture, though. Werewolves? Of course there would also be werewolves out there. Silly not to expect that. Yeah, Fort's one actually, and so is Mr. Cook's. Fort is going to be the next alpha in town when his father dies. Nobody likes him, though." I shivered as I processed that information and remembered my dream about Fort changing into a wolf. I told Sarah about it and she smiled. "You seem really sensitive to all kinds of supernatural stuff. Like the mind reading too. Alex told me how good you are at talking to him mentally already. Seems like you picked up on what he was unconsciously." We'd reached the big house, and I hesitated in getting out. "How do you make that mark?" A knowing look appeared on Sarah's face again, and then she smirked. "You'll know, Brittany. Don't worry about it." As I marched up the steps to the house and pulled out my keys, I felt Alexander touch my mind gently. "Be strong, agramokroi. You know how to reach me if you need anything." I waved as Sarah drove away and then stepped into the house, only just in time remembering that I was supposedly sick, slumping my shoulders and fake coughing once I shuffled up the stairs to my room without saying hello to anyone. There I hurriedly changed into PJs and crawled in bed with a book, if my stepmother would come looking for me. I looked credible enough now, and I knew that Hay would find me in my room if he wanted me. Soon, there was a knock on my door, and then Stephanie burst in. "Where have you been all day?" I pretended to be drowsy as I looked at her and then said softly, "In bed mostly. I called in sick at school, caught a bug." The woman frowned at me suspiciously, but then her expression cleared. "You weren't here though. I had the nanny check your room when Jennifer called that you were not at school. Plain that? And if you're sick, then you won't mind if I check your temperature." I shrugged and explained that as I'd been sleeping over at Sarah, she'd let me sleep because I was sick and she had just driven me home a short while ago. I'd spend the day in bed in her guest room, not here. When my stepmother went to get the thermometer, I hurriedly went to the bathroom and stuck a washcloth under the hot water tap. running it so hot that it steamed. I took that with me and hid it in my lap under the duvet. I knew Stephanie would be easily distracted, so I could pop the thermometer in the hot washcloth, tweaking the temperature just a little. I was lucky because her phone rang, and I managed to get the thermometer to the point where it looked like I had just a tiny bit of a fever. I held it up to her while she was still talking on the phone, and as she read the number, she nodded, obviously looking a little defeated. When she hung up, she told me, "Fine, you're sick. That means you're not going to school tomorrow either." The woman watched in satisfaction as my face fell. No Alexander tomorrow. The evil woman had known I didn't want that. She sashayed out of my room saying, "I'll make sure the maids keep an eye on you. If you need anything, you can ask them." "Oh, and I want your phone. You're not talking to your friends till you're better." As the door closed behind her, I tossed the washcloth out and angrily clenched my fists. They just always knew how to get to me. Alexander touched my mind. "You all right, Agramokroy? Are you in trouble?" With the thought came a sense of warmth and love. I went to shake my head and then realized he couldn't see that, and angled a thought towards him instead. "No, I'm not." I managed to convince her I really was sick. Correction, am sick. But now she won't let me go to school tomorrow. And she took my phone. I knew he could feel how upset I was about that fact. It meant I wouldn't be seeing him until Friday. "I can always sneak in through your bedroom window." The thought held a dark, sensual promise that made my skin feel a little too tight. He seemed to know I wouldn't take him up on that offer and send another thought. "We can talk like this, Agramokoi. It is effortless now. We don't need phones. I can sense you are still full of questions. Ask away." I shivered, but was glad to oblige. "When you feed, how does that work? Do you go to a bar and pick up a person and just bite them?" I sensed amusement as he took a moment to formulate a reply. "I don't like going to bars. The taste of blood infused with alcohol. I don't like it. But yes, we do just walk up to our victim and bite them. Every vamp does it differently. Some use hypnotism, others just wipe the memory away, others pretend it to be a love bite. Whatever works." "And how do you do it?" I wondered if he could use hypnotism. That would be a little scary. I'd never know when he would do it to me. "I make them sleep." "Britt," he said. "Sarah. She can compel them with her mind. Like I said, she is strongly telepathic." "Bob, he makes them feel like they're seriously hungover the next day." I took a moment to take in that information. Hungover? Making people sleep? That was pretty awesome. That reminded me that I wanted to ask him about the powers. "You mentioned powers. What was that about? What kind of powers?" It was quiet for a while again, but I could sense that he was thinking of how to reply. It was true, this link between our minds. It was so easy to hear him even though he was a 10-minute drive away from me. As vampires age, they gain power. It works much the same as the immortality fusing with our cells, except that there is a blueprint in our bodies. One can only gain as much power and talents as one already had the blueprint for. Some vampires will always remain weak, others gain strength and power rapidly. He was quiet again. I could tell that he was lying on his back on his bed, staring at the ceiling but not really seeing it. "What powers do you have?" I asked when the silence stretched. Amusement came back to me. "Many Agramoshoi. You'll find out over time," I groaned. "That's not fair, Alexander. You said I could ask you anything. I said you could ask me anything. I never said I would answer them all." But even as he said those words, he continued with, "At least you know I can put people to sleep. I also can light things on fire with a thought or a touch. Our talents are closely entwined with our personalities." I smiled. "So that's how you lit all those candles last night?" "Very good, Agramokroy." "Alexander, Sarah told me about the marks. Will you explain?" Silence. Then I could vaguely sense anger flare inside him, but it wasn't very clear, almost as if he was keeping me out. "She wasn't supposed to tell you that," came his thought at last. Suddenly, I felt mad about that. And why not? I have a right to know. Or were you just going to mark me without my consent? I didn't know exactly where that came from. Alexander had been nothing but gentle and all. Though he seemed to have a penchant for secrets, he'd told me what he was on our very first date. Alexander's reply sounded controlled and a little cold, but the words softened me. "It was my right to tell you, Brittany. I wanted to give you time to get adjusted to what I am first." The mark is irreversible. I will not do that to you until you are absolutely sure. I instantly felt guilty about the harsh words I'd spoken to him. He'd only been looking out for me. It was obvious that it hurt him to think that I might not want him. He was good at hiding what he felt. I almost hadn't noticed through that thick layer of control. I'm sorry, Alexander. Sending him the strong feeling of belonging and love and wholeness I felt around him. I hoped it was enough to ensure him that I did not want to be without him. A giggle suddenly escaped my lips as I realized how far our relationship had suddenly progressed. We'd only had one date yet. This whole soulmate concept, we both knew we'd never love another, never. Alexander sensed what I felt, and suddenly his amusement seeped through, his worries obviously eased. You are so human, Agre Molcroy. Before I could reply to that, Andy burst into my room. His face flushed, his bronze curls messy and several colorful stains on his white shirt. It seemed he'd been allowed to paint today. Brittany, you're home, he squealed as he jumped up on my bed and dove into my arms. I laughed as I hugged my little brother. Hey, giant. Had fun today? Then I sent Alexander. I'm sorry I need to spend some time with Hay. Let's finish this later? Andy went to close the door as he told about painting at school and the teacher getting mad at him because he'd made a mess. He looked a little too proud about that, so I knew he'd done it on purpose. Alexander touched my mind gently. If it's okay with you, I'd like to watch for a moment. I've not had the chance yet to meet Andy. I nodded and then sent back. All right, how does that work? Just relax and open your mind. It's fine like this. A warm spot in my mind, and I knew he could see what I saw and hear what I heard. The rest of the evening I spent talking with Hay while Alexander listened in, although I knew that at some point he'd picked up a book to read. I read Andy's stories, and then we made up our own stories together. The next day was spent in a similar fashion. Although during the day I was rather bored and lonely, Alexander had classes to teach and couldn't talk. And I didn't know how to reach Sarah or even if I would be able to. Andy was at school himself, but he was home at 2 again and stormed up to my room. I think the nanny was very relieved that I didn't mind spending time with him. She seemed hard-pressed to put up with all his antics. Alexander sent me a warm thought when he finished school, filled with longing that I felt reflected in myself. Already my body seemed on edge, strained like butter stretched too thin over toast. Andy seemed oblivious to the tension. Alexander shut me out just after 7 p.m. One final thought telling me not to worry, and that he was going over to the next town to feed. I was sure he told me this deliberately to test if I was okay with it. He didn't want to strain me and scare me away, but he also wanted to show me clearly what he was, so I had the chance to decide whether or not I could live with that. He didn't realize that I had long since made that decision. Nothing he did or said could change my mind about it. Although I knew we didn't really have a choice either, I was sure the strain on my body would kill me if I couldn't be with him. I knew it was the same for him. Just before I fell asleep that night, my head filled with that lullaby. Alexander's voice softly singing it to me and guiding me into the warm embrace of sleep. The next morning, I was up and dressed, ready for school way before Jennifer was done. As she entered the kitchen and saw me, she quirked an eyebrow in question. It wasn't hard to pick up on the fact that I wanted very badly to go to school. Before she could get her own breakfast, she disappeared up the stairs again. I heard her call her mother. My heart sunk. She was going to get her mom to make me stay home again. I couldn't face another day alone, so I scrambled for the door, slinging my backpack over my shoulder. It was still early. If I hurried, I could walk and still be in time. Today was Friday, and I had the feeling that if I didn't see Alexander today, I wouldn't be able to all weekend. I had heard my stepmother say that father was coming home again today, and I knew he hadn't forgotten that I was grounded, even though I felt like he had no right to do that anymore. Since I was 18, according to him, it was his house, so his rules. I was halfway out the drive when Stephanie's scream froze me in my tracks. Get back here, Brittany. You are not going to school when you might still be sick. To the neighbors, that might have made her sound like a concerned mother, but to me, it sounded like the Wicked Witch of the West. This had nothing to do with my health, and everything with their plot against me seeing my friends and Alexander. Somehow Jennifer had guessed about my feelings for him, and possibly his feelings for me too. I turned slowly, cast Stephanie one look, and told her, "I want to go. You can't stop me. I have a right to go to school." Then I turned and kept walking, only to stumble into something solid and warm. I went sprawling to the pavement, my bag tearing open and scattering my books across the curb. I yelped as the palms of my hands burned when I caught myself with them, tiny pebbles embedding themselves in the fragile skin and blood already welling where skin had been torn off. "Brittany Baker, didn't I tell you to obey your mother?" A stern voice thundered. My eyes found the shining black leather shoes, the immaculate suit in unrelieved black, the wide shoulders and the golden-rimmed glasses balanced on a firm hooked nose. Blue eyes glaring at me with such cold anger that I wondered why my blood wasn't freezing over. "Father," I said breathlessly, "I just want to go to school. I already missed 2 days because I was sick. I don't want to miss anymore." I didn't care that I sounded like a bookworm or a nerd, as Jennifer would call it. He frowned and cast a look at Stephanie, who stood on the steps at the front door. She wore a green silk robe embroidered in flowers and birds, the fabric ending just above her knees, the robe falling open to reveal her ample cleavage. The woman was pouting at him, and his expression firmed as he turned back to look at me. "Get inside, Brittany, now." Anger rolled off him like a heavy fog, and I scrambled to my feet, gathering my books in my torn back in a rush. A savage kick to my side sent me sprawling across the pavement again. Dazed, I lay there for a moment, trying to figure out what had happened as pain blossomed across my side. My father had kicked me. I blinked as tears jumped to me eyes, and then there was a touch on my mind. "Britt, you're hurt. Hang on. I'm coming for you." Alexander's presence in my head gave me strength. "No," I snapped at him. "I can handle this myself." I did not want him here, not where Jennifer and Stephanie could see him, not where he could get hurt, and not where he could see my sorry excuse of a father. I knew Alexander wouldn't be able to control himself. I felt him accept what I'd said, and then he sent back, "You will call me if it gets out of hand." The thought was nearly a snarl, and I could vividly see him clutching the steering wheel as he drove to school, his face twisted in anger. I had to hold back the thought that things had already gotten out of hand and struggled to my feet, clutching my bag to me as I stared at the man that somehow had the right to call himself my father. Alexander didn't withdraw his presence from my mind, leaving just the tiniest trace so that I knew he was there for me, so that I could draw strength from him. "Get inside the house, Brittany." My father snarled at me, but I knew he didn't sound as threatening as Alexander did when he wanted to. Still, my heart beat in my chest in fear and anger combined, and I didn't fight it as, with a sense of defeat, I walked back into the house.